On today's episode,
a French professional model recruiter who for over a decade arranged for the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to meet multiple models was found dead at his home near Paris on Monday.
And it ties Howard Lutnick to Jeffrey Epstein years before he has publicly said they had a relationship.
Jeffrey Epstein was on the board of directors for an organization called the Lifeboat Foundation.
This is insane. Todd Blanche is in the Epstein Files, and he is the person currently in charge of, and they're asking to permanently be in charge of, the release of the Epstein Files.
You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests align.
I'm the first American man criminally prosecuted over the Epstein Files before anyone actually in the files. And in 56 days, I faced my second court date on September 23rd because I organized an Epstein Files Easter egg hunt all across Manhattan. And I'm here outside of Jeffrey Epstein Mansion in New York where we had one of the eggs because every single day leading up to my court date, I'm going to be opening a new egg with a reason why we must stop Todd Blanche from being confirmed by the Senate as the next Attorney General of the United States, making him the most powerful law enforcement individual. He is the man who led the Epstein Files cover-up, who refused to release all of the files, who refuses to unredact the names of the enablers, and refuses to get justice for the victims. So many people went through those doors and enabled Epstein and abused and committed crimes. And in this building, so many women and girls were abused, and they deserve justice. People that went through these doors are people like Donald Trump, like Elon Musk, like Secretary of Chamber of Commerce Howard Lutnick, like Lex Wexner, like Leon Black, like Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Ehud Barak, Woody Allen, and so many others who run our government, run our society, and face zero consequence and face zero court, yet I do. This is why you need to call your senator. And you need to tell them to vote no on Todd Blanche, call the senators on the Judiciary Committee and tell them to vote no. And also, please follow me and Disrupt so you don't miss a single egg with a reason why we must stop Todd Blanche. Also, please join our Discord so you don't miss a single update and so that you are part of our community to disrupt the Epstein class and the corporate elite. Stay tuned when we open an egg, when we reveal who really is Todd Blanche and the reason why we must stop him from becoming the Attorney General.
This guy is interesting. I'm a little curious to get some more details as to what he's actually being charged with, because I don't understand it, but certainly from a high level, it doesn't sound great. The optics here are terrible. And I don't think you're ever going to get justice, unfortunately. That's the reality of this, folks, is as terrible as it was, stuff like that is probably still going on, and they're going to get away with it.
Model recruiter who introduced young women to Jeffrey Epstein found dead in France. A French professional model recruiter who for over a decade arranged for the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to meet multiple models was found dead at his home near Paris on Monday. Daniel Syed's body was found in his house in Cologne. An autopsy will be performed on the body to determine the cause of death. Would love to know who was doing that.
It'll be legitimate.
It'll be very legitimate. They always are.
Mm-hmm.
There's never been an autopsy done that's not legitimate.
That's right.
Anyway, CNN's Katie Polgalase recently interviewed Syed. Oh, that's what he did. That's a no-no. He talked.
Can't talk.
He talked. Dead men can't talk, Daniel. That's the thing.
Yeah, this is not surprising in the slightest. I think the most surprising thing, frankly, is more bodies haven't turned up, to be honest with you.
Major discovery in the Epstein Files right now, as yes, people are still going through them and finding things. And this discovery came from a FedEx label, and it ties Howard Lutnick to Jeffrey Epstein years before he has publicly said they had a relationship. So this just blows Howard Lutnick's story completely apart. This was discovered by writer Caitlin Pierce. She goes by Kate Justice when she writes. But guys, follow along here. So last year, Lutnick told the New York Post that he had cut off all ties with Jeffrey Epstein in 2005. Then the files came out and blew his story completely apart. There were the photos of him and his family visiting Epstein's island in 2012, and the files indicated that they had a relationship at least through 2018. CBS News discovered that Lutnick and Epstein were in business together at least in 2014, when both signed on to a deal with the technology company Adfin. So what Kate Justice found was a FedEx invoice from July 27th, 2001, that shows an overnight letter was sent from Epstein's personal lawyer, Darren Indyke, to Cantor Fitzgerald Securities' employment lawyer. His name was Robert F. Mace, and he ended up being killed in the September 11th attack on the World Trade Center, where Howard Lutnick's Cantor Fitzgerald offices were located.
Yeah, so I think this guy is coming up because he's testifying to Congress on the Epstein Files. So yeah, that old interview has been cropping up. His supposed story about Epstein. I think it was like a Fox News or maybe a 60-minute interview that he did. Like I said, like the clip said, I think it was a year ago. I think it's older. Or he might have given a second interview recently. Anyways, any statement he's made on it has been provenly false. There's documentation showing his statement and his story in terms of his connection to Epstein are complete and total lies, and he's had a long-standing relationship.
Welcome to part 8 of the Epstein Files series. Today I want to talk about why I think Ghislaine Maxwell could be the mastermind architect behind it all. I spent my career at CIA and NSA. I also advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All of these opinions are my own. All right. Start with Ghislaine Maxwell's upbringing. We've talked about her dad. If you haven't seen it, go to a few videos back in my Epstein Files series. Very politically connected and dies in 1991 off the Canary Islands, falls off his boat. They don't know if it's murder, suicide, etc. In the books to his media company, find $500 million in fraud, and Ghislaine is forced to move out of London. She gets an $80,000 salary and moves to New York City. Within a year, she meets Jeffrey Epstein, and then they start the shit show that becomes what we know today. So she has the political connection, charm. She is the one that in the files people claim as the most charming. Epstein is not very outgoing and extroverted. Another interesting part is that they don't sleep in the same room. According to the victims, they weren't like boyfriend, girlfriend, but she was with him all the time and lived with him. And I find that interesting. The other piece is that every single victim says that she was there. She wasn't only there, she's recruiting, she's grooming, she's normalizing everything that's happening. And she took part in it. When they referred to the boss in the Epstein Files documents that were released like 2 weeks ago, I've been going back and forth whether it's her or EB, who we've talked about. But anyway, so she's part of it all. There were no victims that have come out prior to Ghislaine that I know of. Part of me is like, was he born a monster, or did she take his corkscrew, his weakness, found out that he was into this, and that's what she used to then do what she needed to do. So he was actually the mark. A lot of her personality traits and characteristics align very much so with someone who's very strategic, Machiavellian, operative, in my opinion. So Epstein goes to prison and dies shortly thereafter. As we've talked about, sacrificed for the network, I think. But the network didn't die. People still worked there, like, for another year until she was arrested. The network didn't die. Everything was dismantled after her arrest. They also found her on a 150-acre farm in New Hampshire. Paid for in cash through an anonymous LLC. Like, that's where she was hiding, changing phones all the time. Like, this is very strategic behavior. Then she was caught in 2020, put in prison. Then everything started to dismantle.
Like she said, it's a network, but it's not a network run by one person. It's a network of networks, right? So yes, Epstein had a network, but also he was operating within an even broader network of other networks, right? So that's how it operates, right? It's like Game of Thrones, right? I always come back to that analogy because it's the easiest thing for people to wrap their heads around, or to give you a metaphor or an example. And it's houses, right? It's a network of people operating maybe under some central leadership, but that central leader isn't the king of the Illuminati running the whole show, right? That's not how it works. He's also part of a broader network. These networks have aligned interests a lot of the times. Sometimes they don't, compete against each other. Sometimes they operate on behalf of governments. Sometimes they operate on behalf of another government. Robert Maxwell, it's unclear, it's extremely likely that he was most loyal to Israel, but he also did things for the British government. He also did things for Russia. So these networks is a lot more complicated. They operate in a fashion that's a lot more complicated and nuanced than simply pointing, oh, that's the boss. That's not how it works, guys. That's movie shit. That's goofy nonsense. And we have to start elevating our thinking and the discourse around this stuff if you ever want to be able to get to a point where we uncover some of what it really looks like. And I think working towards a framework can help people start thinking about that. It certainly helps me start thinking about that. As I talk through this, I'm thinking through it myself. And that's what I think it's really like. It's not Ghislaine or Jeffrey or Les Wexner or Ehud Barak or Robert Maxwell. It's all of them.
Congratulations, you've made it to the bottom of the Epstein rabbit hole. Pay close attention. Jeffrey Epstein was on the board of directors for an organization called the Lifeboat Foundation. He was also on the board of directors for an organization called Teachers in Space. Look them both up. They actually exist. They have websites. They don't even try to hide what they're doing. The Lifeboat Foundation builds giant underground cities, okay? They openly advertise it, and for a fee and with an application letter, they might accept you to join their little society where they apparently have whole cities underground. They also advertise being able to take the clients off-world in the event of a catastrophe. And it's really interesting because Teachers in Space also talks about taking payloads off-world, which is all really weird, right? It gets even more interesting. You see, Donald Barr was the one who inducted Jeffrey Epstein with zero experience into the Dalton Institute, where he was a teacher. Donald Barr wrote a really interesting book called Relations in Space about an aristocratic elite trafficking children into space. Are you following me here? What's even weirder is the district attorney that was supposed to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein and bring him to justice was literally William Barr, Donald Barr's son. Now, the Lifeboat Foundation is really interesting because in 1996, they pioneered wireless money transfers. They are the second organization in the world to ever do this. This is a decade or two before Bitcoin even was a concept, right? So you got an organization that is doing wireless money transfers that are untraceable, large sums of money, and they're building giant underground infrastructures. It gets even weirder. I found out through looking on archive.org that Lifeboat Foundation has a homeless youth outreach program. And they used to have a whole station in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, and a whole board of people. They're all out of the Rhinelander, Wisconsin area. And they had this meeting in 2017, a homelessness problem solving meeting, right? So you have an organization that's interested in homeless youth, interested in wireless money transfers, and interested in underground infrastructure. I don't know if you guys heard about Sasha Riley, but he's telling the truth. He was trafficked by the Epstein elite. He was in snuff films that he survived, but he witnessed people get unalived. And what I'm telling you is it gets crazier. The reason why Epstein surrounded himself with the scientific elite is because he was doing human cloning and he was doing consciousness transferal and stuff like this. I swear to God, I know this gets crazy, but it's true. And what I'm telling you is he had celebrities down there. He had a cloning center down there. And I know because I was in some of these films. They're on the dark web. I'm in films on the dark web.
That was so good until the end. That was really so good until the end. And this is the problem. First, I should say that Lifeboat Foundation is the first time I'm hearing about it. That's really interesting. I want to look into that more, and I hope I can find a documentary on that. A lot of those pieces were really coming together for me because it's not that far-fetched to me. There's plenty of billionaires out there that are building underground bunkers and all kinds of stuff. The explosion of bunkers being built by billionaires has gone up 1,000%, something insane in the last 9 years or something like that. So the data on that is there to support this being a realistic possibility. Obviously, you still need to build a legitimate argument and demonstrate some type of evidence in order to make it more compelling. But the pieces in terms of just pure logic make a lot of sense to me. They do this kind of stuff all the time. They use philanthropy and foundations and carve-outs and all kinds of stuff to do different sorts of things. You can look into the founders, you can look into a lot of different organizations loosely affiliated with the CIA, have gone on to do very bizarre things, and including trafficking. And there are known documented cases of this. So this argument was really panning out. Despite him not having a lot of legitimate evidence, the concept was structurally sound, shall we say. Then he went off the deep end. And that's really unfortunate. And that, to me, is really going to be one of the resounding themes of this channel, is you gotta stay, even if that was real, unless you have the video documentation, photos, something, no one cares about testimony anymore nowadays. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And if they're a victim, I apologize. It's tragic. Thank God they survived. But at the end of the day, we need proof. We need proof. We need proof. Period. End of discussion. And if you don't have it, your testimony only dissuades what was a pretty legitimate argument to begin with.
Watch this.
It just came out in the Epstein Files that the elites were purposely trying to lower testosterone in men so that men can't fight back, putting estrogen in the water, making men very passive and weak through social media. They're telling them, oh, your masculinity is toxic and you should actually just be super soft and sweet all the time and gentle and never fight against anything. It's to cover up the things that they're doing. Because if every single man had the mindset of, no, our job is to protect women and children no matter what, they would not be getting away with the things that they're getting away with.
She revealed why men today are no longer the same, and it's terrifying. More and more, we've been told that masculinity was the problem, that men needed to change, become softer, calmer, and never raise their voice, and we all accepted it without questioning anything. But what was discovered in the files today proves that all of this was part of a much bigger plan to deliberately lower men's testosterone through what we drink, what we eat, and what we consume on social media, to make men passive so they never fight back again. Because the only thing that could destroy all of this is men who decide to protect women and children no matter what, curious men who ask questions, and especially men who refuse to look away. And that is exactly what they do not want. So they found the perfect solution: convince the entire world that those kinds of men are dangerous, that wanting to protect people is toxic. And while everyone debates masculinity, they continue carrying out their plan effortlessly because it's already working without them even having to force it.
That's a pretty legitimate theory in my opinion, and I personally believe it. But take gender out of it, I think they're trying to do that to all of us. There's chemicals in the food, there's chemicals in everything. Healthcare is basically drugs at this point. They just want to put you on pills, turn you into a forever patient. All of the stuff about, quote unquote first world society in America has been corrupted to turn you into a commodity that they can squeeze every dime out of.
This is insane. Todd Blanche is in the Epstein Files, and he is the person currently in charge of, and they're asking to permanently be in charge of, the release of the Epstein Files. The issue is right now, the survivors of the Epstein class recently released a PSA because Todd Blanche, he's now been nominated for Attorney General. He's going to be before the Senate Judiciary Committee for a confirmation hearing starting as you listen to this today, Wednesday, July 15th. But the idea that this person who's in the files himself, Todd Blanche is in the Epstein Files. I'm going to say it again. Todd Blanche is in the Epstein Files, and he is the person currently in charge of, and they're asking to permanently be in charge of, the release of the Epstein Files? Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, I think that's a bad idea. He's also separately...
Makes zero sense.
It makes no sense. He's separately facing a state bar complaint for ethics, and now a concerted effort by the New York City Bar Association's like, we don't think this guy should be in charge of anything, much less have a license. So the Epstein survivors are asking to sign a petition. We have it linked in our show notes, and also go to fivecalls.org, and there is information, talking points, how to find your senator, what to say when you do call them. If you're a constituent of a senator on the Judiciary Committee, those are kind of the most important ones to hit up. So it helps no matter what, but because they'll all vote when it gets out of committee, but it shouldn't even get out of committee. This is insane.
No,
it's like ridiculous. He's in the files.
This is my first time seeing a clip from these two. Sinisterhood. Obviously, they play on Sisterhood with Christy Wallace and Heather McKinney. Go give them a follow. Sounds like an interesting podcast. Couldn't agree more with what they're saying. Unfortunately, they're a lot more positive about it than I am. I mean, go do what they said. Call your senator. Do all those things. I don't think they're going to make much of an impact, though, frankly. I think this guy's probably getting confirmed, whether we like it or not. It will be a good indicator for me. The way I'm looking at it is this is a good indicator or a barometer of the level of corruption we've reached. If this guy gets passed through, it's as bad as I think it is. If he doesn't, maybe there's some hope, but I think he's likely to get passed through.
Too bad they eat kids. A small insulated bag would be fine. I don't recommend checking it. No need for crazy amounts of ice. One should do. There is one bag of beef jerky in the fridge. Please get it. Also, Blank has more at her place. Please get it from her as well. I suppose it needs to be in a cold, insulated bag. Just wanted to touch base about jerky. J.E. said he was going to start eating regular food again, so he might be eating less jerky. He said he has 6 bags of it in the downstairs freezer. Why would you freeze jerky? Steve needs a 6 to 8 ounce portion of jerky. I gave you all the jerky we had, and it lasted only half the amount of time it was meant to. I felt like it was more important for you to have the jerky to eat during my time off. My plan is to make a batch before I leave for LSJ, and some of that will go to Steve, and the rest will go to you at LSJ when I arrive. Little St. James Island. And that's what LSJ must mean. So logically, that means that they were doing this off of the island. Steve Hansen is sending jerky to your attention overnight. I believe it should be enough to get him through. Jeffrey Epstein is asking to bring him more jerky. I'm flying in on Friday. I will bring jerky. Is there a time I could come say hi and drop off the beef jerky? And that's from Jeffrey Epstein. Francis has time to come tomorrow. Show me how to make it. Jerky class anyone. He will bring you to taste his new jerky recipe from the restaurant. He sends a warm hello. He's working at a restaurant called guys, the restaurant's called Cannibal and Cooks. Wait for it, beef jerky and steak. Yeah,
to me, this is the thing that really needs to be looked into more deeply that I don't see enough people talking about. There's so much here, and there are folks out there. I think the best name I can come up with is Whitney Webb, who take it beyond the trafficking stuff, and it is more than the trafficking. I think they want you to focus on that, so you let the other stuff go. There's a whole financial component. There's like arms trading. There's a lot going on here that should be looked into more deeply. Some folks have, like Whitney Webb, but what I don't see a lot of people looking into or talking about more deeply is the language, the coded language. I'm not the first person to mention it's been mentioned many a times, but to me, this is a big red flag. What is it? It doesn't necessarily mean kids or cannibalism or whatever, even though they did say it at the end, but that's not a smoking gun. It could be anything. We really don't know, but it's likely not beef jerky. So what is it? Really, what is it? That's, to me, one of the biggest questions we need to start looking into more deeply.
In the end, Epstein didn't get rich because he was a market genius. He got rich because regulators looked the other way while he looted the accounts of those who trusted him. If money was the fuel, the destination was legitimacy. The New York Times investigation makes it clear that Epstein didn't just want to be rich. He wanted to be untouchable, and to do that, he needed to embed himself so deeply in the establishment that no one would dare question him. His most ambitious target was the Clinton White House. In February 1993, just weeks after Bill Clinton was inaugurated, Epstein walked into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue alongside Leslie Wexner. He didn't just show up empty-handed either. Epstein had become a political donor, having contributed $10,000 to help refurbish the White House, a donation that secured him a spot at a reception with the president. Obviously, nowadays, presidential meetings are much more expensive and paid for in crypto. Money was only part of the equation. He also used people as currency. The Times reports that Epstein leveraged a connection with Lynn Forrester, a successful executive who would later marry into the Rothschild family. Epstein reportedly convinced her that he could help her in her divorce settlement, insisting that he was the only one who could protect her assets. Through Forrester, who was an appointee to the White House Advisory Commission, Epstein had his foot in the door. The strategy worked, and by 1995, Epstein was close enough to the president that Clinton wrote a personal get-well-soon note to Epstein's mother, scrawling, "Hang in there," on a yellow Post-it note that Epstein kept. Once he had political access, he aimed for social prestige, setting his sights on the Rockefeller family. Using his foundation, funded largely by other people's money, Epstein began donating heavily to Rockefeller University and the Trilateral Commission, buying himself a seat at the table. In 1995, David Rockefeller welcomed Epstein to the board of Rockefeller University. He parlayed this into yet another lie, telling people that he managed money for the Rockefellers, a claim that the family's actual financial advisors say was completely false. Perhaps the most strategic relationship he purchased was with the legal scholar Alan Dershowitz. In 1996, Epstein met Dershowitz in Martha's Vineyard, dropping names of Harvard elites like Larry Summers. He worked hard to ingratiate himself, even flying Dershowitz to Ohio to a birthday party for Les Wexner. But the Times uncovered a transaction that was far more significant than a party invite. Epstein had convinced a hedge fund manager to let Dershowitz invest in his fund. When the fund suffered massive losses and wiped out Dershowitz's investment, Epstein stepped in. He bullied the fund manager into making Dershowitz whole, threatening to pull Wexner's $30 million investment from the fund if the fund manager didn't sort it out. The fees on Wexner's investment more than covered the cost of making Dershowitz whole, so it went through. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. By using Wexner's money as leverage, Epstein ensured that a prominent legal mind owed him a big favor. That favor paid dividends years later.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about a few different topics today, but this is a good sort of summary of many of the pieces I've been trying to get at. Is like, it's a network of networks, right? Epstein had his own network of people that were working with him, that were involved in various things, some of that trafficking, some of that financial related, whether it was hiding assets from, taxes and governments and whatnot, whether it was providing relationships to high-level people, whatever. Then he would take that and leverage it to establish relationships with other networks of high-level people like the Rockefellers, like the Rothschilds, and then you can start creating this web, and it's a network of networks, right? The Rothschilds have a massive network of people that work for them, that they can leverage, that they have connections to and influence over, right? It's a network of networks, and I think this is a good explanation of that, and it's a piece of the puzzle that can never be forgotten, right? It's not just Epstein, it's not just Ghislaine, it's not just the Maxwells, it's all of them. It's a network of networks that really need to be diagrammed. Like how are they all connected? Because it's so comprehensive. There's just so much of it, and their relationships are so complex and nuanced and entangled and incestuous, and not in the literal sense, but it's so difficult to untangle this, and I think it's something that needs to be looked at more closely.
There were some files missing.
Yep.
Did you see the chart of the years that they're really missing from?
Mm-hmm.
And we can see that there is a massive gap between the years of 1999 to 2001, when you had the tech bubble blow up and the Lewinsky impeachment trials happening. The election of 2000, the highly contested election of 2000, John Kiriakou.
Yep.
And then in 2001, you have the worst terrorist attack in United States history in New York and DC and in the skies that fell over Pennsylvania with United 93. And suddenly all these files are missing. But John, we did get an email from 2003 that slipped through the cracks. This is from 2003. Someone named Ed Epstein sends an email to one Ghislaine Maxwell saying, any interest in being on the Shadow Commission on 9/11, the membership list is secret. She responds, thanks for the invite. Unfortunately, I cannot be on the Shadow Commission.
A Shadow Commission. It takes my breath away.
Yeah, this is such a great meta-analysis of the emails, showing the lack of content from those critical years. I think so much changed in those years, 99 to 2001. And it's really interesting. I need to go watch this podcast and see what John Kiriakou has to say, because he's more of a 9/11 mainstream guy. He kind of seems to, at least in some of the clips I've seen him talk about 9/11, he seems to buy the mainstream narrative. Granted, he was working at that time. He was part of the CIA. He was part of the response, America's response to 9/11. So you could see where his bias would come from. But he's got a lot more inside information than I do, or certainly 99.9% of the world does. So his opinion to me carries a lot of weight, not to mention his street cred. I talk about him all the time. This guy paid a very significant price to come out and blow the whistle on some things that were going down in Guantanamo and our treatment of prisoners and this, that, and the other, right? I don't know all the details or the nuance there, but he's got a lot of street cred as far as I'm concerned. It's really interesting because of his beliefs, because of his street cred, to see his response to this, right? To see the gap in those emails. What does that suggest? And then we have this email that slips through the cracks mentioning a shadow commission on 9/11. I can't help but wonder what John thinks about this. I really need to go watch this podcast in full. To me, it's pretty damning, especially combined with all the other evidence we have around 9/11.
The lawsuit seeks the entirety of the Epstein files that are legally redacted, but there's a subset of files that I have successfully convinced a federal judge to have Todd Blanche, as the acting attorney general of the Department of Justice, to have to produce by Thursday, no later than 3 p.m. Eastern, in an unredacted form. And Steph, those relate to specific emails and internal DOJ documents that, in my argument, have been illegally redacted. Todd Blanche has chosen to use the victims and their private, confidential information, which we all know has been revealed to the world over and over again, despite the Epstein Files Transparency Act as a law saying that can't happen. Todd Blanche has been trying to use the victim's privacy as a sword and a shield to say, look, Judge, I am not going to turn these things over because I'm protecting the victims, but also saying, Judge, you're trying to make me turn this over and I'm trying to protect the victims, when in reality, I know, Steph, that there are some redactions here that have nothing to do with the victims in this case.
Yeah, I think this is the clearest indication, if we needed any, that the system is pretty broken when our supposed representatives in the federal government have passed a law on our behalf to make it illegal to not release these documents, and they still don't. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? They're probably not going to. And like we spoke about earlier, I think if this guy, Todd Blanche, gets appointed permanently as Attorney General, then it's a pretty indication of how things are going to play out, and an unfortunate one. So let's hope that doesn't happen, but I am not particularly hopeful in that regard, unfortunately, because I think it's pretty clear, guys. It's in our face now. There's no more excuses. There's no more red team versus blue team. There's no more protecting the victims. There's no more BS at all. It's right in your face. It's right in your face. They're going to do whatever they want, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's my belief. And I'm going to end it there for today. I know. Inspiring episode, I'm sure, leaving everyone on a hopeful note. Anyways, I hope you guys had enjoyed today's TikToks. I certainly did. The Epstein Files are a never-ending treasure trove of horribleness, but really interesting, meat on the bone, some real meat on the bone in terms of the way power really works in this world. And I find it never-endingly interesting. I really do. So I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments down below. What's the most interesting part of the Epstein Files that you've been made aware of? This is one that I want to we're going to be returning to for sure, and maybe taking pieces of it, looking into it more deeply. Like I said, I do have aspirations of maybe trying to map out some of that network, but that's a gargantuan task that I don't know that I'll ever really get to. But in my mind, if there's a smaller component that maybe we should look into, maybe Robert Maxwell's history specifically or something, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, because I want to take a piece of this and kind of dive in a little bit more with my other segment of content where we look at things a little bit more closely, a little bit more critically. So if you have any recommendations, Epstein related, drop them in the comments down below. Throw me a like, subscribe if you haven't. All the support and engagement means the world to me and is critical at this juncture in the channel. So really, really appreciate it. And we'll be back next time with another one. See you then. Thanks.